I can tell you our day jobs are all different now, aren't they, in the Planet? Mine also consists of teaching third grade math and pre-K spelling. But at Hello Alice, our role in my company is to help small business owners launch and grow. And we are a social enterprise that is free for business owners. And we specifically work really hard with women, people of color, our US veterans, the LGBTQ plus community, entrepreneurs with disabilities, as well as our white male counterparts. But we want to make sure that everyone is inclusive to the business ecosystem. So when the very first COVID cases were starting to actually rise up in the EU, that's when we started seeing impacts of small business owners here very early. And then finally, as you saw cases here, the fear, I will say, of small business owners was palpable. And then we moved to shelter in place when fear turned into, what the heck do I do now? And so what we found was the most important thing to do was distill information. And so we worked really hard to build www.covid19businesscenter.com. And that is in partnership with hundreds of other nonprofits. As of last week, it's also the forward-facing for the National Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And what it is built on top of machine learning. So based on your company's stage of growth, your physical location and industry, we are helping you unpack the federal resources through the CARES Act. We are helping you find emergency grants, whether they're from our company, Facebook, QuickBooks, you name it. And then finally, what we found has been most important is peer-to-peer support. So you can search for other owners in the COVID site and ask, okay, you're a bakery, are you still delivering? Did you pivot online? The unfortunate thing that's being accessed the most is, how do I furlough employees or pause my business? But it's important to help business owners do that with dignity, also in a way that helps them save money to reopen when this is over. So our job has just been 24/7 to distill what has come up to almost 50,000 resources a day, but make those accessible to all owners, not just those who are tech savvy. Two, are these resources in Spanish? If I am disabled, can I access them? If I'm a US veteran and I just came home from deployment, my wife's military spouse who's working, can she access them? So that's really what we built, and we're here to the bitter end.
Okay, just a few things. You referenced the CARES Act. That's the $2 trillion package that was passed by Congress. And is there any cost for this service?
No, this is totally free. It's being backed by us and, like I said, hundreds of nonprofits. There's absolutely no cost. There's no data sale behind it. Any financial information that we're asking is to help you sort through these different guided resources. So it's as safe and secure as it gets, and we're continuing to make it better, I hope, every single day.
All right, thanks so much, Elizabeth. We'll get into more depth with that soon, I hope. Now, Herman, I know that over the weekend, you've been in touch with many of the folks that have made Los Cien one of the most important ways that people in our county connect. And so can you tell me what you've heard from the Latino business community and how what they're needing right now, how they're responding to this devastating pandemic?
Well, again, thank you, Steve, for having me on. And just to kind of follow just on the word fear that Elizabeth brought up, there's no doubt about the fear and not knowing what happens next. And so with many of the different business owners that I've spoken to, and several of the nonprofit organizations that I've also reached out to, I also contacted the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which right now is currently doing as much outreach as they possibly can to the small business owner. I just want to reiterate that currently there's approximately 6,500 Latino businesses, small business in Sonoma County, which makes up about 13% of business overall. And so many have not only to worry and to say, what is our next step? Where do we find the necessary resources just to sustain afloat, not only sustain afloat their business, but their family, where the net profit bottom line goes to sustain them. The second family being their employees, having to basically furlough their employees. And I think that when you really go in deeper, you discover there are many undocumented business owners. There have been many undocumented employees that are seeking, it's kind of like a domino effect, seeking information of where can we find support, because right now the federal government is not giving it. But there are pockets out in the community, nonprofits, different organizations that are able to help some of the employees. And as far as the employer, small business, we are trying to saturate through the Economic Development Board, through the county, through Marco Suarez, and others, Chamber of Commerce. And as this process of being able to support the businesses, as this can come together with the government, being it was so quick, many of the banks are trying to get themselves situated. So right now it's how do we sustain ourselves? How do I support my family, and sustaining on the business part, rent, utilities, family, and then when they take a break, am I going to be able to reopen?
Well, great. Thank you so much, Herman. All right, David, I would like to ask what you've heard from your resources, from your contacts in the business community, about what happens when they've gone to try to access this federal aid. Is it easy to access? There's reports that this is difficult. Are you hearing that this billions of dollars is getting through to businesses in the county?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag, but it's early yet. I think what was true is that the federal government, we'll give them credit, they turned around the rules pretty damn quickly. I had talked to some federal representatives who thought it was going to be 2 or 3 weeks for the Treasury to come out with the rules for the CARES Act programs. And really, the SBA ruled around in about a week's time. Now, sometimes there's, I think the banks are scratching their heads as underwriters, trying to figure out all the P's and Q's to these programs. So sometimes you pay a little price for that moving so quickly. The businesses seem to be, that I've talked to, and I know that one bank has received hundreds of applications just over the weekend, that they seem to be, feeling hopeful that this will be the program that will keep them on pace in their businesses alive. And I'm talking about the Payment Protection Program, or the PPP. That's the $350 billion program that the feds rolled out that can have forgivable loans if you keep up to 75% of your employees. So hopefully those businesses that are still having their employees, or can get their employees back and get access to these dollars, this can come through relatively quickly. And I'm hearing a lot of optimism from the business community because of the forgivable piece of this program. They really truly like that aspect of it.
Okay, tell me also, from your contacts in the business community, are you feeling that they're responding in the kind of philanthropy that we saw and were so proud of in Sonoma County during the fires in 2017, 18, 2019, or is this a different universe?
Well, I think, to be honest, it's a different scenario. Although I will say that Sonoma County always rallies. People are very generous. Our business community is very generous. And I think Elizabeth just mentioned Hello Alice. Look at Guy Fieri, putting out dollars for restaurant workers, or the John Jordan Foundation, just to name a few. Clover Stornetta down here in Petaluma gave $100,000 to Petaluma Valley Hospital and delivered a bunch of meals for healthcare workers. So you still see that type of attitude in Sonoma County, but it is different. It's unlike a isolated fire in one area where certain people are affected more so than others. the vast majority can come to their aid. In this case, there's a lot of unsure, people who are unsure about the future, businesses that are unsure about the future. Even those businesses that are considered essential know that the economy is going to change as we go forward, and the longer we're in this, the bigger the hole that we're going to be in, the tougher it's going to be to get out. The banks, the Community Reinvestment Act gives us some hope as well. So I think there'll be some, but probably not to the same degree as what we saw after the Tubbs fires in 2017.
Okay, Elizabeth, let me ask you, sort of in terms of when you were in touch with these business owners, with these entrepreneurs, can you tell me kind of what they're talking about, what their primary concerns are, what is on their minds, and how you're responding to meet the challenge of helping them?
For sure. So Friday, I'll just give you a live example. I just popped out a note saying, does anyone want to jump on Zoom with me and I can help walk you through the COVID center? And it maxed out our Zoom channel. We were expecting 20 and it was in the hundreds. And the first thing I just kind of stepped out of the way was owners asking each other for what I would call extremely tactical advice. So we ended up sectioning people off of where they were located to talk to each other. What people are going through in Alaska is very different than here. This is very different in Oklahoma. And that peer-to-peer advice seemed to be just the most important thing in that moment. The second was a lot of people need permission right now to pause their business. And I cannot underscore the mental toll that takes on people. Am I a failure? Does this mean I didn't plan correctly? Did I not have enough cash flow? I don't know if Herman's seen this, but I have found especially with a lot of our women owners, also this guilt about applying for all of the CARES Act. Should I apply for it? Do I really need it? Will someone else not get it? And my response to that to everyone is yes, you should. You should apply. And we don't know even if you have cash flow right now, what will be the cash flow that you have in 6 months from now. So a lot of this is very emotional for business owners. Again, I'll just underscore how surprising that is. But I just want to acknowledge that people sometimes just need the help to say, yes, I should close my business for a while. My customers will still be there. This is the best way to save money. Yes, I should ask for help. And then finally, how little cash folks need to keep going. So we did a survey. We had about 61,000 people access the COVID-19 center and go all the way through it in the last 3 days, to give you an idea. The majority of them we asked between $0 to $50,000, what do you need to keep your business going? The number one answer was $10,000. The second answer was $5,000. So, and again, we're talking about business owners with less than 20 employees. So as it relates to encouraging folks to not just apply for all things CARES Act, but all these generous funds, we have an emergency grants fund. There's 24 enterprise companies that have emergency grants funds for $5,000, $10,000. That seems to really be making a difference for folks right now.
I would like now, there's a couple of questions that have come in. Several of them are for David. And here's one from one of our listeners. What is the county doing in obtaining additional ventilators and masks for COVID patients? Have they contracted with businesses within the county to make ventilators and masks? Are you in touch with folks, David, who could be helping out in that way?
Well, I know my neighbor two doors down, her company, which is actually in the North Bay, they've switched their production to make masks, to actually make N95 masks, which is great. So you've seen a lot of that. The county has been, like the rest of the state and the rest of the nation, working on the supply chain issues, the shortages that are out there, making sure that we can do all that we can, both with working within the system and working on a few workarounds, which means contracting directly. And even this morning on our EOC call, we had word of—
It's Emergency Operations Center.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We had word of the county health department working on acquisition of quite a few masks through a third party. So that's what it's come down to. But, you know, I will give our emergency operations crew a big shout out. They look at every contingency. They are constantly trying to stay ahead of where we are. They plan for the worst, hope for the best, but you know, it's very important to make sure that we have that planning in place. And so there is active participation with trying to get all the materials that Sonoma County needs.
That's great. Here's another question from a listener for you. What's the correct method for the public to notify government when a business is ignoring the shelter-in-place guidelines if they're putting their customers or employees at risk?
Well, as of a couple of weeks ago, or now a week and a half, the local law enforcement is actually enforcing the health order. And they've been trained and they've been told what is essential and what is not. And they all know what the social distancing requirements are. So I think I would start with your local law enforcement agency. Perhaps not a 911 call, but just to touch in with the police. And they are very good, I know, about going around and letting businesses know if there's a better practice out there. The county has been very proactive in trying to get information out to all businesses to really ratchet up the social distancing requirements. You've seen that. Our local store here, grocery store here, has a maximum number of people allowed inside. You wait outside 6 feet apart for people to come in. The carts are cleaned. The check stands are cleaned between patrons almost. I mean, so it's very, very much ratcheted up, and that information has been sent out to wide and far to all those businesses that are open to make sure that they're safe.
Okay, and this last one for you, David, and then we'll get back to you, Elizabeth. Someone who was disappointed, and this is not a business question, unfortunately, to see in the newspaper that you were defending Christopher Godley because he flouted the rules. And what do you think about your defense? Have you also heard from your constituents that they're still bubbling about this issue that happened a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, I have. And I communicated poorly. I will readily admit that. But what was left out of the story was the most important quote, in my opinion, that there is one set of rules and one set of rules for everyone. Quite frankly, the conversation was more about my outrage or not with what happened. Chris Godley, retired major in the Army, does a wonderful job, probably the preeminent emergency manager for all counties. Made an error in judgment, apologized, fessed up to that. I accept his apology and we move on. And that was what I was trying to convey, not very well, but it wasn't relaxing that. I understand, and I will say this, I understand all first responders, all people under pressure. I understand what they go through. I understand, we need to be a little kinder to one another as we go forward to make sure that those people are doing the job that they need to do and they're as refreshed as possible. It doesn't mean you go to the beach when it's closed. And that quote was left out of that story, which is no small quote in my mind, but that's the way it was.
Finally, Herman, I'll ask you, because you are such a connector in our community. You have built this Los Cien to an organization that brings together everyone in the county. I know you're in touch with so many people. What is the feeling that you're left with right now about what the needs are and how we can all work together to help activate the community?
Well, I think Elizabeth kind of hit it on the nail for me. And what it is communications. We need each other. We need that moral support. We need to be able to assist someone to bridge a need to someone else that can be able to be supportive to them. And I think in anything that I've been fortunate enough for 23 days being at home, I have been able to speak with many more individuals and try to support them, give a shoulder, give a hand. and then also to try to be informative, know what all the information is. There's so much. It's very difficult to stay on target with everything that's happening. But just with Elizabeth, that's given me another opportunity to be able to share. And that's what we're striving for, is to be able to saturate our community with as much information as they can, and to be able to support them when they need that little extra hand.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Herman Hernandez, David Rabbitt, Elizabeth Gore, for joining me today. I hope as this proceeds, we'll be able to get together again.